Well, I want to start by saying thank you this morning for coming. We have introduced an important bill, Senate Bill 696. We call it the Fee Stabilization Measure. And the goal of the bill is to lock in student fees at the time a student enters the university, to lock in that particular fee so that they're not seeing the outrageous raises that we've seen at the UC level and at the CSU level. As you know, over the last 10 years, we've had about 150% increase at UC, 180% increase in fees at the CSU, and it's very erratic. When they happen very quickly. They happen in terms of very little notice, and the UC Regents' decision of a 32% increase was indicative of how these decisions were made, not giving students the opportunity to plan. And this bill, we believe, will actually lock in a fee so that a student knows when they enter the university that that's going to be their fee from the time they're a freshman all the way through graduation. And it's very similar to how students pick their majors and actually get through college. Once those course requirements are set, once that major is picked, the courses don't change and the requirements don't change midway through a student signing up for that particular major. We want to keep that type of changing the goalpost mentality when it comes to student fees, so that people can actually plan and that things aren't changing as they don't change when people take their classes. It will also, we believe, require the universities to better plan the money that they do have. It's clear to us that we are going to have a debate in the legislature about the university getting less money every year due to our budget problems, but that is an issue that we have to discuss here in Sacramento. We think this bill will allow us to have that debate, but there's one thing about this bill that we want to make very clear, and that is when we have spikes, these ups and downs that you see to my left, we should not turn to students as walking ATM machines. They should not be there to just fill in, if you will, the gap when we have very bad budget years. The goal of this particular bill is to, in essence, look at that line on that chart, is to try to provide a stable way for students to plan for their student fees, and more importantly, to allow the university to budget along that line, much like we're going to have to budget along those lines as well. I can also say that this bill will also cap student fees, so obviously inflation and costs go up. We are going to have the university cap fees for that new entering class or new transfer student. If indeed there has to be a fee increase, be no more than 5%. And the goal of this is to make sure that the 5% number is something that people can plan for, and also in the bill is to make sure that if we are going to have a 5% increase for entering folks, that that's going to be their rate, if you will, whether a transfer student or a freshman, that it be noticed 6 months prior, so that everyone has an idea that the university is actually going to be taking those fees up 5%. In the end, we believe this is going to force higher education folks to come in, have a debate in the legislature about what it's going to take to right-size their institution. Clearly, there are no consequences at this point in time. There's lots of protests. The legislatures, in many cases, are outraged that university regents or CSU trustees raise the rates, but yet we have no credible debate here in the legislature in terms of what should be the right size for these universities in terms of making sure that the fees actually fit the students. Let me just end by simply saying I do see this as a consumer protection measure. Students are consumers, and students in many ways are left out of the debate here in the legislature as we watch what occurs at the UC level and at the CSU level. The goal of this is to simply say that we have to have a stable fee structure for students. Students are not walking ATM machines that can be charged anytime there's a bad budget. And more importantly, it tells the university that they have to have a more stable way to budget their particular needs, but it shouldn't be on the backs of students. Students, obviously, in this particular case, we need to have graduates. We need more jobs in California. It's going to be a theme, I guess, today, both from Democrats and Republicans. But if you don't have a college education, it's very difficult to compete in the job market. So we see this bill as part and parcel of the larger package put forward by the pro tem. There's no doubt that college is becoming more and more unaffordable. More and more students are dropping out mid-quarter in order to make up for these fees. Many are taking second and third jobs, and many parents, in terms of freshmen, are trying to find the additional $2,000 in many cases from a quarter to quarter to make up for an erratic change pushed forward by the regents and the CSU board. And hopefully this bill will change that debate And we look forward to a very vigorous debate with the University of California, CSU, and community colleges. This is a bill that covers all three systems, and hopefully we will have that debate here in the California State Senate prior to June. So with that, I'd like to see if we could have John Ryan, who's from Sacramento State University, come up, and after that, Don Gibson from UC Davis, Sandra Mendez, who is at Sac City, and a chemistry major, and thank you for joining us, and Ricardo Hurtado. He is from Cal State University, and a government major. So let's come up in that order, and we just get your take.
Thank you, Senator. At Sac State, I know kind of the rallying cry, what we heard a lot from the professors this past semester was that we're paying 33% more for 10% less, which means that we're paying 30% more in tuition fees, and with furloughs on top of that, we're getting 10% fewer classes. In addition to that, though, the fee hikes that we experienced at the CSU system, we got a $300 fee hike in May, and then another $670 fee hike later that August. And for a lot of us, this was after we'd locked in financial aid packages. So we had to somewhere come up with an extra $900 to go to school. On top of that, we're sitting on classes, on classroom floors, just trying to get into classes or add classes that we need to graduate, or even if you're not trying to add that class, you've enrolled in it, you're sitting there with 10, 15 other kids that are trying to add that class. And I mean, for like me specifically, I was sitting on a classroom floor for 2 weeks just trying to add an econ class. I had a friend of mine who had to make the choice between getting an impacted molar removed or paying for books that semester. So it's something that's been a pretty serious strain on all of us the past year.
I'm Don Gibson, a senior biotechnology student at UC Davis. These fee increases have hurt directly in my own household at UC Davis. My roommate and close friend had to withdraw from UC Davis a few quarters ago because she can no longer afford to go to college. She is the first member of her family to go there. However, she planned to re-enroll back in this winter, but with the incredible fee increases, she could not plan to re-enroll, and is now looking for a job, and in this economy, she cannot find jobs anymore. And I'm one of the fortunate ones to, after seeing all my college savings dry up and taking 2 jobs, I'm still luckily enough to be enrolled, but I'm struggling to get into classes. It took me 4 weeks to get in a class I need to have so I can graduate on time and promptly. These fee increases are hurting those who can afford school and even more those who can't. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sandra Mendez, and I'm a chemistry major from Sac State. And I just want to say that I'm really glad that this bill has been introduced because tuition has gone up increasingly high, and it went up at a time in the middle of the year where a lot of students did not have the time to plan for it. So it really, really affected them. And it seems now that as if college is not for those who actually have good grades that can go to college, it seems that it's for people who actually can afford college. And there has been a lot of classes that have been taken out of Sac State because of this, because it's really affecting the student, and it's hard to be a college student and to be working at the same time. So I just want to say that I'm very glad that this bill has been introduced.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, any questions? Are we good? Yes.
First thing I'd like to ask is, we put a cap on the student fees, which seems like a great idea, but
Sure.
what is there to prevent, say, UC Regents from voting for new pay raises for themselves, or from the cutting classes, laying off more instructors, laying off staff, in order to offset future cost increases? What do we do to prevent that?
I think this particular bill forces a real debate between the legislature and the universities, which has not occurred. We've been talking at each other rather than talking with each other about something that needs to occur at our universities, right-sizing our universities, looking at efficiencies in our universities. And I'll give you an example. I would challenge any of you to take a trip to a UC campus anywhere in California and see how many classes are offered on Friday. I mean, if indeed we are running out of class space, if indeed that we are not budgeting efficiently, I would tell you that we have some efficiencies to fix at the University of California system. We are cutting courses. We are hiring tenured professors in many cases at the university level who never teach a course, who are there for research only. They're using public dollars. At least 30 to 35% of public dollars are used and on their particular FTE, their full-time equivalent, and we expect that they'd be in the classroom, and yet many aren't. And the argument then is there's just not enough classroom spaces, and I will tell you that Fridays can be a good day to have some courses at the university, for example, and those are the types of things that we need to look at. We also need to look at more of what we would call teleeducation. Some of the largest universities now are not UC, CSU, or community colleges, but many are utilizing services that allow students to take courses online, allow students to communicate with their professors via computer, via teleprompting, these types of issues. And I think what the goal of it is to try to figure out more efficient ways for the university to deliver services. We believe that creating a line, an artificial cap, if you will, on student fees gives the university some sort of stable thought process of what they can expect, at least from students. Any gap in that should be a debate between the legislature and the university in terms of how do we make that up and what does it mean in terms of additional money or reductions in terms of efficiencies at the university system. I just think that this bill will actually help us create a dialogue that probably just shouldn't occur because Karen Bass shows up at the UC Regents meeting or some of us, attend various trustees meetings. I mean, this should really occur here in the halls of Sacramento, and I think it's a good opportunity for the university to do that.
A lot of those things you just said, did you support the idea of the state legislature taking over the financial operations of the UC system?
I wouldn't necessarily say we support taking over. I do think that the legislature needs to set, if you will, and give the university a stable funding source that they can count on every year. That's our job, and that's what we should be doing. Very difficult, as you see. Most of these lines correspond to dips in our budget, and in many cases, the university is cut. This year's budget, as proposed by the governor, is not as draconian as the last budget, but I imagine that this year we'll have another healthy debate on UC and CSU funding. We also have to step up to the plate and recognize we are destroying our jewels. We are destroying the University of California if we do not promote, if you will, better, stronger funding sources from this particular institution. If we put our heads together, I believe we can actually try to find a more stable funding source, whether that be an endowment that allows students to go tuition free in their last 2 years, whether that means looking at some of our lottery funds and creating a portion of that for an endowment for college students, whether it means looking at, I think as Robert Reich has said recently in a university commission, that some students in their junior and senior year should have no fees and they should take a portion of their particular paycheck to pay back that portion of their university so they go tuition free. There's a lot of innovative things we can do, but if we don't have the debate and draw the line that students can't be charged every time there's a gap in our budget, as so they're walking ATM machines. Until we stop that debate, then we're not going to really have the discussion in terms of the gaps between that line and those dips that you see there. And I think this bill is going to allow us to do that.
Senator Denham, about 2 weeks ago, introduced the Student Protection Act.
Yeah.
You're introducing this one now. Is this a little political one-upsmanship?
No, I think Senator Denham's measures are a bit different. Senator Denham's measures ask for no more than a 10% increase, but that can occur in the middle of the year. That could occur anytime. Our bill says that whatever your fee is, when you come into the university, it's locked at that number and never changes until you graduate. So there's a very big distinction in terms of what we're trying to do. Obviously, ours is 5%, and Senator Denham's 10%, which, of course, is a different number. And I think overall what we're trying to do is to make sure that our bill is comprehensive. Senator Denham has a bill that deals with the UC. It's a resolution. And the other bill deals with the CSU system. Our bill covers both UC, CSU, and community colleges in one bill. So I think there's some differences between our bills. I'm trying to get the erratic nature of fee increases out of our particular discussion, particularly when students. I don't think Senator Denham's bill does that. It still allows a 10% increase. It could occur a week from now. It could occur a month, as long as it's noticed, if you will, on the UC or CSU agendas. We want a student to know that their fee schedule is exactly what it was when they came in as a freshman. It stays that way all the way through graduation. And I think it might incentivize them, in fact, to stay in and not drop out for a quarter, because if you don't, you come back with a different fee schedule. So it might keep people in line in terms of graduating, both from the community college level, CSU, and UC level. So there's some distinctions, and I do applaud Senator Denham for taking a look at this issue, but I think this is probably a better way to bring more discipline to the university.
What are the next steps for this bill, for your bill?
Well, the next steps are to get it into the Senate Education Committee, passed, and hopefully out of our House by the end of June. And the goal, obviously, is to have major discussions with the University of California, the CSU system, and the community college systems, because we have to have this debate. I was there at the UCLA campus today. The UC Regents raised the fees. There was students were outside protesting because they had little warning, and in many cases weren't going to be able to make up the difference. The regents appointed by the governor were inside. There were a few legislators inside as well. Karen Bass, myself, and my past colleague Mark Ridley Thomas. But that wasn't a real debate. That was really the UC Regents making a decision, pointing fingers at the legislature, saying we have to do this, we have to raise fees on students. But at the same meeting, approving $100 million of additional faculty increases, $200 million of additional UC medical cost that could have been deferred, and an additional $100 million for the retirement system at UC. So the mixed messages were we can go to the students who can raise their fees because they have to pay the fees, but at the same meeting we can go ahead and rebudget ourselves to catch up on some items. Not double judging that, I just think that debate should occur here in the legislature, and I think this bill will force us to do that.
Do you think it's a realistic step to be able to control these student fees that the UC system especially has up to this point just been able to impose its will on whenever it feels like? Do you really think that you'll be able to control that?
I do, and the reason for that is if the University of California, even though it has the autonomy clause in our Constitution, it still receives public funds. These are not private universities. Would it work at USC and Stanford? No. But can it work at the university level? Absolutely, because the reality is the autonomy clause was really about academic freedom and making sure that we were not, in essence, meddling in what the university should be teaching. However, we pay about 40% of every faculty's FTE, even if they are being paid from a research point of view. That 40% allows us to have a debate about really how the university should operate, what those salaries should be, and the legislature has never really put ourselves in that position. This is an opportunity in this year to do that, and I think the regents and their designees should come and testify to the Senate, particularly, and tell us what they think we're doing wrong and how their funding sources could be set in a different manner. But I think one thing should be clear: we should all be on the side of students and not looking at students as, if you will, the makeup money, the money that we go to and charge and say they're going to make up the difference. And I think that is, if you will, the issue. I can tell you one thing. Many fee increases, however how you look at it, can be seen as a tax. In fact, UC President Udorf said that this was a tax on students. He said it right after the UC Regents meeting. I was standing right next to him. Can you imagine if in our institution, if we had to vote on a tax on students, it wouldn't pass. And in fact, many of my Republican colleagues have a very high standard. It's called 2/3. We can't get taxes passed here. There's no such standard in many cases at the Regents level. There's no participation from the legislature in that debate. And in every sense of the word, this is a fee and a tax on students, and the goal of it is to have a more rigorous test and to have some standards for increases, and at least have a higher voting standard. And that's something we should have a discussion on here in the legislature. Okay? Anybody else?
No more questions for me.
Well, you asked just about all of them. Students, you want to say any questions for students? Anybody? Right. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.